I'm going to talk about my own experience with regard to reducing academic misconduct in my unit. And um, I think there is a lot to cover in this particular presentation. And I feel like, that I have to structure it in a way that it could be beneficial for everyone. So in this presentation, I'm going to touch on the context, the case study that is emerging from one of the units that I have taught before. I will be talking about the problem, the theoretical framework, and then the roadmap that I devised to address a problem and what was the impact on student learning. And then I will propose a practical approach that could be helpful for use in any unit. So to start with, just to give you a bit of the background about the context, as you are all aware, CQ Renew is an incredible initiative to improve learning experience of our students. And I'm sure that it is being led by very smart people in the university who are doing a great job in this space. And if you go back to the CQ Renew vision, you'll find something about student-centric curriculum and enhanced employability as a key focus, the area that we would like to achieve. Also, there has been a lot of work regarding the unit checklist that should be adopted in all undergraduate and postgraduate units in higher education space. So mainly we talk about the assessment design. We talk about authentic assessment tasks that every unit should comply with. We talk about a mechanism to provide early feedback to students even before the census date. And we talk about reduction of the potential for academic misconduct. So this is the context that we are talking about in this space. So this case study involved a unit that include 2 high-risk assessments. And why it is 2 vulnerable unit? The unit is called Research and Project Management, and it is 2 vulnerable for so many reasons. And research has said that thesis proposal, for example, which is the main assignment, is the most significant assessment that could be purchased by students in their candidature. And research also says that international students are more prone to contract cheating and academic misconduct because of the different system, the competing priorities, and so on. And also casualization of academic staff is one of the areas that are under a lot of investigations in the current in our current practices. And there is a lot of work regarding the effect on casualization on academic integrity of students. And our business model actually relies a lot on casual stuff. The unit is a large unit. In average, we got 240 students per term, and the unit coordinator has to manage everything virtually because we deliver the unit over 4 campuses. And the unit was delivered or is being delivered in term 2 of the student study plan. So there is insufficient academic writing skills being developed. Like it is not the end of the 2-year study. It is just the second term. Students are not yet familiar with the way how we are actually asking them to do assignments. So those are factors that have actually affected the way how I need to address the unit and look at the assessment practices. So the story of the academic integrity in this unit started when I joined CQ University on the first day of term 2, 2017. I was assigned this unit to coordinate and deliver in Melbourne campus. And as you see in this graph, like in term 2, 2017, there was no reported cases about plagiarism or contract cheating. But this doesn't necessarily mean that no cheating has occurred in that unit on that particular term. In fact, the assessments, actually, the 2 assessments were advertised in many contract cheating websites. But simply because there was no measures in place in that unit to detect suspicious cases was a factor that has actually deprived me from the opportunity of detection. I couldn't actually find a proper and enough evidence to say that this is a suspicious case and I have enough evidence to look at. So what I did between term 2, 2017 and term 1, 2018, there was a non-teaching term in term 3. So I started to look at good practices and what research is saying about that. And I mainly focused on the problem to identify the prevalence of that problem actually in my unit. And I focused on the detection first. So the first intervention that I have made was to detect those who are actually cheating. And when we ran the unit, we found out that at least 35% of the students have actually engaged in academic misconduct. And then I found out that this is not the solution then, because it is an overwhelming experience for the unit coordinator, for the reporters, and for the investigation to carry on and finalize each case. So I focused on the prevention as a proactive and more positive measure to address the issue. And I tried to find ways of how can we actually improve the way how students look at academic integrity, how they can engage in a better way in their education. And I applied a lot of measures, and those measures were actually quite successful in the last 3 terms. So you can see from the graph that we hardly had issues with academic integrity in terms of plagiarism and contract cheating. We had some other issues with regard to falsifying of data and stuff like that, but not the academic integrity and in terms of plagiarism and contract cheating. And so what happened in this unit then? So just to give you a brief, this unit had 2 individual assessment items. We had a critical review report and we had a research proposal. So in term 1, 2018, the main intervention was focused on the process to detect the cheaters in the first place, not to prevent them from cheating, to detect them in the first place and see the volume of the problem that we are actually facing. And a minor change that I made to that assessment from term 2, 2017 is the introduction of SPA, self and peer assessment of draft proposals, and final proposals were to be derived based on the comments and feedback on the draft proposal. That was the main change that I made to the assessment apart from the processes. And I made a checklist. That checklist, actually, I even shared that with you, Matt, if you remember 2 years ago when we had a lot of discussions about contract cheating in my unit. And I tried to coordinate with my casual team to make sure that they will all on the same page with me with regard to the way how we can actually foster academic integrity. So I made a lot of I had called for a lot of meetings with casual staff. I sent them this checklist. I asked them that there are certain enabling arrangements that we need to put into consideration before we make sure that the checklist that we are putting in place will be effective. So we talk about the way how they can assess the quality of academic writing, comparison between the current work and previous work, and if the topic is irrelevant, they can actually flag that, and they need to look at the significant variation between the style of student writing and his previous assignment. That was the main thing. And this means that tutors had to create a better relationship with the students during tutorial classes. And that was the checklist that we have used in the unit, and it was quite effective in detecting the 35% of the assignments being submitted in that unit. So, but that was not the solution. So let us move to the next intervention then, the focus on the prevention, being more proactive and positive. So I created a roadmap, and before we talk about the roadmap, I need to touch on some of the concepts that have actually informed the way how I devised the roadmap. So if you recall the Andragogy definition, it is the art of helping adults to learn. How can we actually facilitate the learning of adults in the modern era? And there are 4 principles on teaching adults. We talk about adults who need to be involved in the planning and evaluation of the curriculum. They should be part of the process, not just recipient of the process. We talk about the experience that provides the basis for the learning activities, where we actually ask students to make mistakes, for them to create knowledge, and that knowledge helps them succeed in their future. Adults are also more interested in subjects related to real life, and here we talk about authenticity. Adults learning is also a problem-centered, and it is not just content-oriented. These are the 4 principles that have actually informed the way how I devised the roadmap. And there is a lot of literature with regard to the way how we really need to approach academic integrity. And those 6 theories or arguments were actually very influential in terms of how they have affected the way how I looked at the unit. So mainly the international students are more vulnerable to cheating. Cheating is just a symptom. It is not the problem. And detection and student motivation are really key factors to prevent cheating. So if we start with detection, that will create a culture within students that prevention will actually be the ultimate goal. And staff training is a must to detect cheating. So there was some resources circulated last week with regard to markers who are actually trained, and then they became more effective in terms of detecting and reporting problems with the submissions. And authentic assessment in itself does not prevent cheating. So we can't just look at the way how we target assessment design or academic integrity by just looking at the assessment design. It is not in itself the solution. And this is the one that I have focused on most, the innovative pedagogy, which is more effective in preventing academic misconduct as per the literature. So what is the dilemma then of authentic assessment? So there was a very nice article that I have read the other day where it says that authenticity itself will definitely require more complexity and resources. And when I read that, I started to remember my early days as a project manager, where we were talking about the iron triangle, time, cost, and equality, where you need to balance all of them in order for you to have a successful project. And for me, I derived this triangle of balance between authenticity, complexity, and resources. So I feel that authenticity is still a great investment, even if we know that the more you have an authentic assessment, the more complex it must be, and the more resources and efforts should be exerted. But that is a great investment because we still put a lot of efforts in detecting and reporting. Some cases have been reported 2 years ago, and until now the university couldn't actually conclude them because of the complexity of them. So in the first place, why can't we actually prevent them from occurring in the first place? So, and you know, in project management, in order for you to resolve any problem, you need to understand the problem and what is actually happening. So I created this fishbone diagram where we talk about the problem here and the causes. The main causes come here, and then you have sub causes. So we talk about assessment, teaching, unit design, policy, technology, culture, and under which you have so many sub causes, and everyone can come up with a different fishbone diagram depending on their personal experience. And that was not the only thing that you should do in order for you to know what the real problem is. There is another tool that we use for something called root cause analysis of academic misconduct, for example. And that is the 5 whys, where you actually go into the deep analysis of what the problem is really all about. And for example, here I talk about significant number of academic misconduct cases being reported in my unit. And the first reason for that, or the cause, is that the teaching team has actually reported the problem. If they didn't report the problem, it is not there in the first place. But because they reported the problem, a further investigation is needed. And you go down the ladder until you find the root cause. And in my case, I found out learning content, class activities, and assessments are not designed for learning. They are designed of learning. And there is lack of training on academic writing. There is inadequate faculty feedback to improve student. Maybe there is a problem with the way how we actually devise their learning outcomes, and whether they are really mapped with the assessment design. And these are the countermeasures then. You need to adjust the unit content. Tutorial activities should be actually addressed in order for students to have the scaffolding learning. Teaching approach should change. Assessment design should be improved to stimulate students and support their progressive learning to build their confidence. So I found out the confidence of the students is a key factor. If we build their confidence in order for them to do the work themselves, I think they will be deterred from conduct cheating. These were the principles that I have utilized when it came to the roadmap. So I came up with this roadmap of 3 pit stops: the unit design, assessment design, and teaching approach. And my ultimate goal was to develop a stimulating and innovative andragogy to build students' confidence and abilities so they can do the work themselves. We want to give them the tools, the information, the resources that will actually give them room to flourish and do the work themselves. So the first pit stop. So in order to be effective in devising the unit design, actually, I had to fully understand the student needs. So students are coming from a very different education system. They don't have enough information about how we do references, how we actually write proper academic piece of work. And The students' lack of skills in academic writing and their poor time management skills, their competing priorities were actually key areas that I have actually looked at, for me to devise the unit design. The unit design, and then because of my understanding of their needs and capabilities, I started to develop a more relevant and contemporary content that could actually stimulate them in a way or another. And I tried to specify some scaffolding strategies to support them to complete the assessment tasks. And this has actually included the weekly topics, the learning activities, and the support strategies. Let me give you the example that I have actually used. I have actually adapted this table from a unit called Assessment for Learning in our graduate certificate in tertiary and adult education at Sikh University, which is quite helpful. It helped me a lot in improving the way how we look at the unit design. So actually it has 5 columns. And when you look at the 5th column here, you will find the assessment is due in week 3, for example. And from that date, you start to do backward analysis and development of what is actually needed for a student who came from a completely different background and education system to be able to do the work themselves. So we talk about paraphrasing, we talk about referencing style, we talk about the way how they look at literature, how they can analyze an academic journal article, and then you link that with the learning outcome. So what you are trying to achieve each week. So based on that learning outcome, you create your topics. And then the tutorial activities should also be mapped with the topics. And then the tutorial activities will help students achieve the ultimate goal of writing the assignments themselves. And here are the strategies that I have adopted. So we talk about a flipped class model. We talk about a tool that I have given to students in order for them to find the proper topic, a unique topic that they can actually research about. So I tried to give them with whatever tools and techniques that could be sufficient enough for them to produce a critical review report. And that was quite effective. So this was the student feedback on the end of term evaluation. So some students said, we got very good guidance and supported documents, which provide us proper way to make assignments. Another one said, the unit made me to gain knowledge about research analysis of the topic. This makes me more confident, feel confident. Another one said something about the efforts for arranging each and every aspect in order for students to reach the learning outcomes. That was the theme that I have seen dominating in the students' feedback. So that was the first pit stop. So the second one was about the assessment design, which was actually very tricky area to deal with, to be honest. So as you recall, so in fact, the focus was on the process rather than the product. So that was the ultimate goal for me when it comes to the intervention to prevent academic misconduct in my units. And I tried to apply that from term 2, 2018, term 1, 2019, and term 2, 2019. And what I have done, I didn't actually change the assessments as such. I just changed the process. And I played a bit with the product in terms of the way how they are going to submit it. So the research proposal was individual, but I changed that to be a group-based assessment. And I asked students to do sequential assessments to be able to get the final product here. So we'll go through that in more depth. But before I do that, let me summarize the rationale for the change. So I have seen that the assessment was of learning of students, not for learning. So we usually ask students to do their summative assessment by end of week 12. And if a student fails, it's done. He can't do anything about it. And the feedback will be really too late for them to consider. So there was no learning process because of the poor assessment design. So if there is an assessment design that can actually foster the learning of students, so the assessment itself is an assessment as well as a way to students to learn more. So that was the main rationale. And the feedback that they receive in week 13 or 14 is not helpful for them to keep learning and improve their academic skills. The feedback that they get was a bit superficial. It was not into the work that they have done themselves that could actually help them improve their work in future assignments or future units that they take. The students were disengaged. They were always procrastinating. They were waiting for week 12 to kick in, and then they do the assessment 1 or 2 nights before that. And there was also a challenge of group-based assessments. So how can we engage every group member? How can we deal with free riders? And how can we actually assess every individual in the group assessment? And there is also the fact that we actually have lack of resources in terms of detection and reporting of academic misconduct. That was a key influential factor. So what I have done with regard to individual assessments, so this was the assessment, a critical review assessment, and simply what I have done, I split that into 2 subtasks. The first task is the product itself, the report by students, which is 10% of the entire mark, and then I introduce in-class self and peer assessment, which is 10%. So I also ask students to do the report themselves. I asked them to come up with a unique research topic, and I gave them the template to help them do that themselves. And I asked them to develop the report based on the materials available online for them. So they can't actually outsource, because I will know that there is an irrelevant content in the report. So we can actually detect the problems. And I asked them to provide a personal reflection of their learning experience, how they did deal with the learning resources in that unit, how they did deal with the tutor, whether the feedback was helpful or not during tutorial sessions. And there was a close monitoring of the report progress in tutorials. Every single week, we were asking students, what have you done so far? So there is a lot of work done in this space, and I have even written a paper about that with another colleague. So with regard to the SPA, we use something called Moodle Workshop Tool. It is available within Moodle. It's a bit complex to configure in the first place, but the moment you have done that in the first time, you will just roll it over and you will be able to do that every single term. So at the beginning, it was a learning curve for me to be able to use that. So I had to train students and staff on how to use the tool, and the tool was helpful in actually allocating the assignments randomly and anonymously, so students receive assignments that they don't know they belong to whom. And every student will receive 2 marks, 1 for the quality of submission and 1 for the quality of self and peer grading. And even the faculty had the room to assess every student and give them the marks accordingly. With regard to the assessment too, so I tried to redevelop that as a group-based assessment. So it had to be more complex to warrant group efforts. I asked them to negotiate a group charter. I was trying to progress, to monitor their progress on a weekly basis. I asked them to use an Asana tool for team management as group members. And that was helpful for me to detect how they are actually progressing in terms of the process. And also we introduced Viva, just to make sure that every individual has actually attained the learning outcome. And we had also the group SPA, which is available within CQ itself. So this was the impact on student learning after I actually derived the assessment design. So students were so happy with the peer assessment because it helped them improve their work before they submit the final assignment. They were saying that the assessment design made it very easy for them to do the assignment. So the assignment is not that hard compared to previous terms. The draft assignment was the best aspect because they know the mistakes and they improve the final submission. And someone said there is a lot of things to do. And here we talk about motivation and the simulation. So the last one, the teaching approach, which is actually, this is my favorite. I really realized that our success in detection and being so strict about the academic integrity in the unit was a very critical success factor. Students started by word of mouth talking to each other about this unit and how difficult it is if you are going to cheat. So they started from day one to talk about their actual contribution and how they can actually engage themselves in the process rather than outsource their work. So I had to raise awareness about academic integrity, and I asked my tutors to do that in every single lecture. We set high expectations and we motivate students to learn. We ask them that this is your future and this is the way how you can flourish in your life if you engage in the process. So we had to engage and train our casual staff. So I had to meet them at least 4 times during the term in order for them to be part of the process. And I asked them to have a one-to-one discussion with their students so they can create a personalized relationship with every student and give regular feedback. And this has created a student-centered environment. And to do that, I used Mentimeter during the lecture timing. And believe me, Mentimeter was a very influential and effective tool. I use that in all my lectures. A student's attendance rate was 20% in the first 2 weeks, and then it ended up to be 90% around the end of the term. It fosters active learning, and it fosters flipped class model. And students can anonymously pose questions at any point of time they want. And the learning via making mistakes. I was actually asking them tricky questions because I wanted them to make mistakes. And then I asked them to speak with their peers and then re-answer the question and then to see whether or not they are benefiting from the solution. So yeah, Mentimeter is like a student response system where you actually develop an interactive slide arrangement where you start with the PowerPoint and then you upload the PowerPoint slides as static slides into Mentimeter, which is an online tool. And then you can create some interactive content by adding questions, by adding bar questions or word cloud questions, or even rating questions, like this one, for example. This could be one of the questions that you can ask to students. And also we have a quiz competition where you can actually provide gamification, where students can, by the end of the lecture, they can go into a quiz competition and they just choose their avatars, and you create certain quiz questions based on the learning outcome that you want to achieve in the unit. So there is another video that I have actually given to the team of academic integrity, and the report, and it is available in Tutara if you are actually more interested to know more about the Mentimeter. I'm just a bit cautious of the time, Matt. So it's a very interactive platform where, and it's just $70 a year, the subscription fee for that. So anyone can use it. It's available for everyone. It's like Kahoot, but it's much more advanced tool than Kahoot. So we asked students at the end of the term, what are the best aspects of the unit? And you can see, you can imagine how Mentimeter was effective. 44 answers were actually carrying the word Mentimeter in them from students' feedback. 46% of the students were talking about the way how Mentimeter has helped them to learn. And this is something of their actual feedback. It encouraged them to keep their work original. So it deters contract cheating, it deters plagiarism. And someone said it is two-way communication and very helpful for learning in a creative manner. Another one said it is so enriching and major attraction. So how can we go from there? Like, you know, this was my practice. This was my way how I dealt with the issue. Last week, I presented a template in the project management course committee. And that template could be used in any unit in our university. And it is actually based on the practices that I have actually been engaged in, based on the research that I have been across. And it mainly talk about the way how you need to look at each assessment, the unit learning outcomes. We talk about the way how you need to use the statistics of previous academic misconduct cases to understand the problem and what's actually happening, and analysis of the key areas that have actually changed from a term to another. So if term 2 has witnessed a spike in the academic misconduct, this means that we need to further investigate why that's happening. Also, an analysis of the problems and what are the root causes, so you can actually derive solutions based on that. A self-assessment of each assessment task in the unit with regard to their vulnerability to plagiarism or contract cheating, and what is the justification of each rating. So if we talk about a report or a research proposal, these are considered high-risk assessments as per literature. And this is the one derived from the table that I have shown you regarding the scaffolding learning. And I think every single unit in our university should adopt something like that in the unit design and unit development during the early stages of each unit. And then what are the recommended strategies? And you can go back to academic integrity in action in Tutara or academic integrity for academic staff. It includes so many practical measures on how to detect and how to prevent academic misconduct. And then a conclusive statement on how you are going to address the problem and whether or not that will affect the unit design, the learning outcomes, or the assessment design for future action. So some other further areas for consideration that I felt could be necessary or could actually ignite more discussion. So we talk about teaching and policy. With regard to the teaching, I have seen the grad certificate in tutoring and adult education, how helpful it was in my practice, actually. It helped me a lot in improving and polishing the skills of myself as a teacher. And I feel that it's really highly recommended for everyone to take this qualification. It's highly desirable for anyone teaching to be fully familiar with the way how we actually teach based on the theory. And the digital literacy, some of my casual staff actually were actually reluctant to use Mentimeter. They were reluctant to use Workshop because it's new to them. They don't have the stamina maybe to get more training and advance their skills. And that was a barrier. And I feel maybe we are doing a great job in terms of training our staff. And this could be another area for more focus in future. The School of Business and Law has derived a roles and responsibility statement for their casual staff. And I feel that particular statement, which is available in StaffNet, could be a great tool for all other schools to use. And I have actually proposed to use that in our school as well. With regard to the policy, the course integration, how can we actually embrace learning scaffolding? So if we have 4 units in first term, how these 4 units could actually scaffold the learning of students who are going to come to the second term? Are we actually doing that? Are we actually coordinating between the deadlines within the first term if you have 4 final assessments are due on the same date? The governance processes, are we actually doing enough with regard to unit proposals, unit profiles, and AURs in terms of how we actually embrace the innovative andragogy? These are areas for further thoughts. So the takeaway message, this is the last slide. So develop an innovative andragogy is much more effective and proactive than you just look at the assessment design. It is more than that. And the authentic assessment in itself does not resolve the problem. So it is mainly a holistic approach. And although authenticity attracts more resources, it is really a great investment to do. And capacity building of our educators is a critical success factor. And Mentimeter for everyone is really effective in achieving CQ new goals and boosting up your qualities in teaching.